Gaming Bolt presents 10 more video game franchises that would be better off with other developers. It doesn't matter how well loved or how popular a video game franchise is, something can happen at any moment that can turn it into a train wreck. A single bad game, a string of mediocre ones, or just a few years of hiatus can turn a super successful franchise into one that needs serious salvaging. It is at times like these that we start to think in hypotheticals. How awesome would it be if this once great franchise was handed off to this other developer? Wouldn't they do a much better job? We've already spoken about a number of franchises that would be better off with other developers, and now we're going to take a look at 10 more. Just like before, we're going to mention video game franchises that we think would be better off in the hands of a different developer. We're going to talk about who we think that developer should be, and also why we think they would do a much better job than the people who currently are working on the franchise in question. Just like the last time, we would like to remind you that this list is purely hypothetical. Entries you see in this feature are not predictions, theories, or speculation. They're simply hypotheses of why these franchises could be better off in the hands of these other developers. With that out of the way, let's get right into it. If you disagree with any of our picks or have suggestions of your own, sound off in the comment section below. Mega Man. Why it isn't working so well. Mega Man was once one of the most popular franchises in the industry, and to be fair, it retains much of that popularity to this day. But that is in spite of Capcom, rather than because of them. The series has been on hiatus for a number of years, despite fervent demands by fans for a new game. Capcom have announced and cancelled several new Mega Man projects since, and the series remains inexplicably absent from the market. It's not as if Capcom are no longer capable of making Mega Man anymore. After all, remember Mega Man 9 and 10, the last games in the franchise that we got. Those were pretty good. It's just they are unwilling. And frankly, after seeing how they've handled some of their other classic franchises over the last few years, such as Street Fighter, we're having serious doubts about their capability to make a good new one. How it could be better. With Nintendo. Mega Man and Nintendo almost seem like a match made in heaven. Nintendo have shown throughout the years that they know how to respect and evolve classic franchises while retaining what made them beloved in the first place, and that is exactly what Mega Man needs right now. Looking at action platformers such as the 2D Metroid games, it becomes exceedingly clear that Nintendo would be more than comfortable with handling this kind of game design and moment-to-moment gameplay that a typical Mega Man experience aspires to. Seeing how Nintendo handled Mega Man and Super Smash Bros. On the Wii U and the 3DS is also very encouraging, and shows that they do respect the franchise the way it needs to be respected. Fable. Why it isn't working so well? Well, because Fable is dead. The fantasy RPG franchise was once one of the heavyweights in Microsoft's first-party lineups, and even though the general consensus has always been that the series has never been able to maximize on its potential, Fable and Fable 2 are, to this day, considered to be among the best games on their respective systems. However, after that, the series continued declining consistently. Fable 3 was a massive disappointment, especially when compared to its excellent predecessor, and Fable: The Journey on the Kinect was not what fans of the series wanted at all. After the cancellation of Fable Legends, Lionhead Studios was shut down, and the future of the franchise looks very, very grim. How it could be better. With Bethesda Game Studios. Fable has always been about providing players with a free-form, open-ended experience set in a high fantasy sandbox, so to say that it would work very well under the management of the Elder Scrolls developers Bethesda Game Studios doesn't seem ridiculous at all. Bethesda is the kind of studio that could actually deliver on all of the promises Fable has failed to keep over the years. They could make it a truly open-world experience, for one, as well as giving the series more interesting, more consistent lore. Coupled with their experience of making sandbox games full of whimsy and personality, you can see why a Fable game made by Bethesda wouldn't be such a bad idea. Bethesda has the ambition and the experience to be able to make the Fable game that we have always been promised, but never quite got. Silent Hill. Why it isn't working so well. Anyone who follows the Silent Hill franchise knows exactly why things aren't going so well for it. The last unequivocally good Silent Hill game came out a long time ago, that being Silent Hill 3 in 2003. The series has seen a lot of ups and downs since then. Shattered Memories on the Wii was admittedly decent, while Silent Hill 4 and Origins weren't exactly bad games either, but the heights that the series touched with the first three games have never been seen again. It also doesn't help that Downpour and Book of Memories, which were the last two games to come out in the series, have been massive disappointments. For a while, it looked like the series would be getting a bold reinvention it deserved with Hideo Kojima's Silent Hills, but that obviously isn't going to happen anymore. So, where do we go from here? How it could be better with frictional games. Silent Hill as a series was as good as it used to be because it was the perfect psychological horror experience. Sure, it had the typical jump scares you would expect in a survival horror game, but the series was mostly as frightening as it was because it left so much to the imagination. And frictional games are some of the best makers of psychological horrors out there right now. Amnesia: The Dark Descent is a perfect demonstration of their qualities as a developer of psychological survival horror, while their most recent release Soma shows their writing chops as well. Silent Hill has been in need of an overhaul, of something fresh for a long time. And while we can all lament the loss of PT and Silent Hills, frictional games looks like the next best thing. The Walking Dead: Why it isn't working so well. To be fair, it's working pretty well. Telltale have done incredible work with their The Walking Dead license, and while each season has arguably not been as good as the last, there's no denying that the overall quality of the series has been top-notch. But here's the thing. The Walking Dead games are restricted to being glorified point-and-click adventures, when really, they could and should be so much more. What also doesn't help is the fact that the few non-Telltale Walking Dead games we've gotten have been so bad that we almost keep forgetting that they even exist. And really, when you look at the basic premise of The Walking Dead, it makes no sense that we haven't yet had a good, fully interactive game in that franchise. How it could be better with Naughty Dog. Take one look at The Last of Us, and this becomes so much easier to explain. The game tackles so many themes and issues that both the comics and the TV show of The Walking Dead do as well, and many might even argue that it does all better. Naughty Dog are masters of storytelling. They have some of the best writers in the business, and The Last of Us shows us that they are more than capable of building the kind of atmosphere and tension that a setting like The Walking Dead needs to be able to properly captivate its audiences. If there is one developer that can do justice to this series' spectacle and action, while also giving it the storytelling treatment it deserves, it's Naughty Dog. Game of Thrones: Why it isn't working so well. It's not that Game of Thrones isn't doing very well in the video game industry, it's just that as it stands right now, the series doesn't amount to much. Sure, Game of Thrones is another license that Telltale have taken a swing at with their episodic adventure games format, and the first season was pretty good, but other than that, we haven't seen much of Game of Thrones as a video game franchise, and that doesn't make any sense. Take one look at the rich lore and dense history in the Ice and Fire series, and it becomes obvious that this is a series that can span multiple genres and do it with great confidence. The one genre where it can rank among the very best, though, is RPGs. That is, if it is handled by the right developer. How it could be better with CD Projekt Red. What would one possibly expect from an RPG set in the world of Ice and Fire? You'd want it to be well written, tackling mature themes and dark tones. You'd want it to feature a cast of morally ambiguous but likable characters. You'd want it to be bold and grim, but also have its own brand of dark, gritty humor. And if you've played The Witcher 3, you know that CD Projekt Red brings all of that to the table and then more. The Polish developers have proven themselves to be more than capable of making a game that is not afraid to be grim and tastefully mature, and the Witcher trilogy illustrates that they are also masters of world building. A Game of Thrones RPG made in the vein of The Witcher 3 is the stuff of dreams for so many fans of the series out there. And while there's little chance of something like this happening anytime soon or ever, we can always at least dream about it. Deus Ex: Why it isn't working so well. For a well-loved franchise that has been around for almost 2 decades, Deus Ex has a surprisingly low number of games. The series went on a long hiatus after just its second release, Invisible War, and while it seemed like the franchise was back and here to stay after its comeback with Human Revolution in 2011, it has been put on ice once again. Mankind Divided was, by all means, a really good game, but several people felt that it was a disappointment compared to its predecessor, and it was its relatively lukewarm reception and less than stellar sales that convinced Square Enix to put the brakes on the franchise for the time being. The ideal scenario, of course, would be Eidos Montreal making another Deus Ex game at the earliest, but unfortunately, it doesn't seem like that's going to be happening anytime soon. How it could be better with Arcane Studios. While RPG developers like CD Projekt Red or BioWare would seem like the most logical choices to make a game like Deus Ex at first, the more you think about Arcane Studios and all of the games they've worked on recently, the more sense this makes. Dishonored and Dishonored 2 are both excellent first-person stealth and action games with branching storylines, and they're both games that excel at building up atmosphere in a unique, oppressive setting, as is this year's Prey for that matter. Deus Ex relies on much of those things: a well-done setting, incredible atmosphere, a unique visual aesthetic, and a balanced blend of action and stealth are some of the things that form the core of the franchise's identity. Using slick abilities to take down enemies or sneak past them, as well as to traverse dense, oppressive environments, is also something that we know for a fact Arcane can incorporate into their games very well. Mafia. Why it isn't working so well. The Mafia series has arguably had only one truly great game. The very first game in the series has become a bit of a cult classic by now, but unfortunately enough, its sequels have barely been up to the mark. Last year's Mafia 3 had the potential to be the push into the mainstream that the series needed. It had an excellent story and some of the best writing you will ever see in a video game, but in almost every other area that counts, the game fell short. Its gameplay was derivative and unimaginative. It had a bland, empty open world, and it also had a number of performance issues. The Mafia series has always been about one that takes one step forward while also taking 2 steps backwards. There's a lot of potential here, but sadly enough, the series has just not been able to maximize that potential thus far. How it could be better. With Rockstar Games. Imagine a Mafia game made by the kings of the open world genre. No, not Bethesda, the other kings. Games made by Rockstar are basically everything that Mafia wants to be. Red Dead Redemption and Grand Theft Auto not only excel at throwing players into vast, diverse, living and breathing game worlds, but also populate those worlds with tons of personality and engrossing, well-written stories. Grand Theft Auto illustrates that Rockstar can do a much better job than anyone else of making a densely populated urban game world, while Red Dead Redemption proves that they are also more than capable of telling an excellent, well-written story with an extremely likable protagonist. These are all the things that you want and expect from a Mafia game, things that we haven't, unfortunately, been able to see in one game all at the same time. Castlevania. Why it isn't working so well. We're cheating a little bit here because we already mentioned Castlevania in the first edition of this feature. We talked about how the series has been unable to stay relevant in the current market, about how despite receiving a few notable releases every now and again, it is nowhere close to being the Goliath it used to be in the industry years ago. When we mentioned Castlevania the last time, we thought Metroid Prime creators Retro Studios would be the perfect fit for this series. And while we still think they'd be a pretty good fit, we gave this a little more thought, and we think we have another developer that would be a much better fit for this series. Hypothetically, of course. How it could be better. With From Software. In a way, the Soulsborne series accomplishes everything that you'd want to see from a quintessential Castlevania experience, and it does so with great panache. Excellent game design, brooding atmosphere, rich lore, and tense combat have long been the hallmarks of the Castlevania series, and these are all things we've become used to seeing from Dark Souls and Bloodborne. Castlevania have been in desperate need of something to come along, grab hold of the core essence of its formula and identity, and then translate it into 3D game design. And looking at the work From Software have done over the past decade, they seem like the perfect team to do so. Will it ever happen? Highly unlikely, but then again, that's exactly the point of this feature. So let's just dream about it and let that keep us afloat until we finally get the great 3D Castlevania game we all deserve and need. Assassin's Creed. Why it isn't working so well. The Assassin's Creed series has seen several ups and downs in the last few years. Assassin's Creed 2 and Brotherhood are both arguably among the best games of their generation, but other than the excellent Black Flag, the series hasn't even come close to hitting those same heights. There's definitely a section of the series' fans that would fervently maintain that Revelations and, to an extent, Syndicate are both great games in their own right. And while there's a case to be made for both of those arguments, the fact remains that after all is said and done, Assassin's Creed has gone from being consistently amazing to amazingly inconsistent. We still have to admit that there's every chance that Assassin's Creed Origins might be the breath of fresh air that this franchise has been in desperate need of for years. But from everything we've seen of it thus far, it looks like it's a great reimagining of an already successful formula. but we've been burned too many times by both this franchise and by Ubisoft to be 100% sure that it will turn out the way we want it to. How it could be better. With Rocksteady Studios. We know what you're thinking. Absolutely not. But just hear us out. Rocksteady can successfully accomplish everything you'd want to see in an ideal Assassin's Creed game. Quick, fluid traversal that is easy on the eyes as it is easy to pull off in-game. Check. Using your backlot to zip on top of a building and then use your glider to gain momentum in Arkham Knight was an incredible feeling. Fluid, fast-paced combat with multiple enemies at the same time? Check. The Arkham series is practically known for its excellent combat. It is in fact very similar to earlier combat in Assassin's Creed games, only it's actually much better. A large, dense, and atmospheric open world? Check. This doesn't even need to be explained. Rocksteady is the studio that brought Gotham to life, after all. An Assassin's Creed game made by Rocksteady seems a little ridiculous at first, but the more you think about it, the more it seems like a great idea. In fact, if the Arkham series is anything to go by, maybe in our hypothetical scenario, Rocksteady might even be able to balance combat and stealth in a way that Assassin's Creed hasn't quite been able to do. Medal of Honor. Why it isn't working so well. Because the Medal of Honor series is dead as a rock. The chances of another Medal of Honor game coming out anytime soon are only slightly higher than those of Half-Life 3 releasing within the next 50 years. For a long time, Medal of Honor was one of the most beloved and well-respected first-person shooter franchises. It used to be a trailblazing series to the extent that even Call of Duty was by and large considered to be just another pretender to the throne. The Medal of Honor mania fizzled out with a string of releases that were decent at best and atrocious at worst. EA did, to their credit, try to rekindle the franchise with a reboot in 2010, but that game was utterly forgettable, while its sequel, Warfighter, was offensively horrible. Sadly enough, that was also the last game we ever saw in this once great franchise. The success of EA's very own Battlefield also means that you probably won't need to come back to the Medal of Honor franchise anytime soon, seeing as they already have a supremely successful megaton franchise to fall back on in the FPS genre. How it could be better. With EA DICE. This is perhaps the most obvious choice out of all 10 of the entries in this feature. While it is the insane success of the Battlefield series that bodes so badly for the future of Medal of Honor, it is that very success that leads us to believe that DICE are perhaps the perfect developer for a new game in the classic shooter franchise. Because Battlefield accomplishes everything that EA may have wanted Medal of Honor to accomplish in a market obsessed with Call of Duty, and it does it better than they could have ever thought possible. A Medal of Honor game running on Frostbite, free of technical faults, and providing both an addictive competitive multiplayer experience, as well as a solid single-player campaign. It sounds, at least on paper, like a winning formula. It's easier said than done, of course, and there's the case to be made that there wouldn't be much to separate such a game from so many direct competitors on the market, Battlefield itself included. But if there's a developer that can bring back Medal of Honor to its former glory, it's DICE. And that'll be about it for this one. If you guys like what we're doing at Gaming Vault, please consider subscribing to our channel, and I'll see you guys on the next video.